From the Centre for Public Christianity, you're listening to Life and Faith. I'm Simon Smart.
I'm Justine Toe.
And I'm Natasha Moore.
We have all three of us on deck today for a feature episode on one of the hidden but increasingly urgent stories of our time, the fate of Christianity in the Middle East. This region is the birthplace of Christianity, but in recent years, persecution and discrimination have led many Christians to flee. Justine and Natasha, you've been having some fairly intense conversations with Christians who are either living there or have lived in that part of the world.
Yes, recently we got to be part of an international conference that was held here in Sydney. It was all the Bible societies from around the world, some 100 of them, coming together in the one place, which meant that people from all over the place came here. And so we'd figured we would make the most of that and start to talk to people whose experiences we hear about on the news, perhaps, but can also seem quite distant and surreal.
Yeah, so the conference was held at the Novotel in Manly. For people who don't know Sydney at all, Manly Beach is one of the top tourist attractions in Sydney. And we were doing these interviews with men and women who have seen and are seeing just horrific suffering in their countries. While we're looking out on this gorgeous sunny day, people walking along the beach, you know, the contrast was pretty striking.
Yeah, I felt that especially speaking with Nabil from Iraq, who, of course, has seen his whole country fall apart and everything that comes along with that. And I also felt that with Ehab from Egypt.
And I got to speak with Nahid. She lives in the US now, but she's from Iran. And so we talked about her story, but also about what's going on in Iran, some quite unexpected things at the moment.
So it's a gift to hear and then be able to share some of these stories with you. We start with Egypt.
It's one of the countries where Christianity started. So Christianity in Egypt is not something new, or it hasn't come with missionaries recently. Egyptians are Christians for the last 2,000 years.
This is Ehab. And yes, while Christians have been in Egypt for as long as Christianity has existed, the religious landscape has definitely changed over that time. Conservative estimates put the number of Christians in Egypt today at around 10 to 15% of the population.
Christians are part of the community in every possible dimension, in work, education, business, the way we live in certain areas. In one building you would have Christians and Muslims. So in that sense, Christians in Egypt is part of the society and they're not isolated in any way.
For the most part, Christians and Muslims have gotten along pretty well, until fairly recently.
Building churches has been an area of conflict. It has been an area of tension between Christians and sometimes the authorities or sometimes with the Muslim people. Also, some Christians feel that they discriminated against in some jobs sometimes, in some of the positions in the government or the army. That's on one hand. But on the other hand, that's not 100% of Egypt. You have some people who are enjoying good relationships, but there are some areas where there is tension, where the relationships are not in the best shape.
But the situation intensified just this year. There have been terrorist attacks targeting Christians and tensions have escalated in some areas.
I remember reading about this in the news just before Easter. There are a couple of attacks on Coptic churches in Egypt.
Yeah, on Palm Sunday, there were twin suicide bombings that killed 44 people and injured dozens more. Then a couple of months later, gunmen opened fire on a group of Coptic Christians travelling to a monastery in central Egypt. And in this attack, 29 people were killed, and that includes children.
As I say, this was done by some of the terrorist groups that have made Christians a target, and they will target Christians as individuals, and they will target churches. And they are doing what they said that they will be doing. This has been part of some of the terrorist attacks, and that the country was suffering because police stations, some of the checkpoints of the army, some of the army facilities, they were attacked by terrorists the same way that the churches were attacked. So it's not just Christians at that time. This is terrorism. It's affecting the whole world, not just Egypt. And Christians have become target to terrorism more than any time in the past in the last 30 years in Egypt.
But what's truly remarkable, and it's taken the mainstream media by surprise as well, is the way that Coptic Christians have responded to these attacks. They are full of forgiveness and grace.
You had 21 Egyptians that were martyred in Libya. And you have many families, they lost their daughters, their sons, and They, with no exception, everybody said, I forgive the people who did this. And this is what the Bible is teaching me. And I have a complete faith that the people who were killed is now in a much better place, and I have no bitter feelings toward anybody.
Ehab told me about a mother who was doing an interview with the BBC just days after her son had been killed.
The interviewer was asking her, what do you really wish that would happen to the people who killed your son? And she said, I would have nothing against them. I really forgive them. What do I get if they were killed or anything? The only thing I would ask for them is to be enlightened. And if they are enlightened, the whole world would be a much better place.
And then he told me about another woman who was interviewed on a popular Egyptian talk show not long after her 8-year-old daughter was killed in a church shooting.
And she said, I have nothing to ask against these, the people who did this. The only thing I can ask is we should actually pray and fast so those people would repent and they would know the truth. And the interviewer was very puzzled and was very amazed. He was actually shocked. Humanly speaking, she was supposed to be having all the bitterness and all the aggressive reactions to the people who did this, but she was completely peaceful, and the answer was a great encouragement for a lot of people in Egypt.
Oh, heck, that's an amazing response.
Yeah, I really tried to press Ehab on how it was even possible for people to have this kind of reaction, to choose to forgive in a situation like that.
It's very simple. It's actually, that's what they have been taught in churches, and that's what the Bible is teaching them. So because they have faith in what the Bible is teaching, and they have faith in what the church has been teaching them, to love their enemies and do not take revenge, and to be givers, to be forgivers, and to show love in everything they do. So that's the very natural response to these events based on the very strong convictions that they have from their Christian perspective.
Now to Iran.
So I was 16 years old when I went to the church. One time I heard the pastor said, if you ask God something with all your heart, God is going to answer your prayer.
This is Nahid. She was born in Iran. Her father was a Christian, but her mother at the time wasn't, and her neighbours and friends at school were Muslim, so she grew up sort of between Christianity and Islam. That's how she describes it.
And that time, I didn't have any joy. I was very depressed and sadness in my heart. So that night, I asked Jesus, today I heard this message. I want to see if it's true or no. I'm asking you with all my heart, please take my life. I don't want to see the sun rise tomorrow. I'm tired of this life. And I slept, and I was sure tomorrow morning I will be dead. But God didn't listen to my prayer. And I said, oh, God, why you didn't listen to my prayer? The next Sunday I went to the church, and I see really Christians are happy. They have a joy in their heart, not just in their face. And I start searching that and say, oh, it's because of the sin. When we have sin in our heart, when we sin against God, we can't have joy. So I start to get rid of that sin. I started by myself. I said, oh no, I cannot get rid of sin with myself. So I asked Jesus, I am nothing. I can't do anything for myself. Would you please clean my heart and come live in my heart? And after that, I have a joy in my life. Any situation changed, that joy is there because I know Jesus is with me.
But it wasn't an easy life for Nahid, being a Christian in Iran. In fact, she would eventually have to leave her country because of her faith.
I was working for Iranian Bible Society, which the government shut that down in February 1990. And after that, when I married with my husband, which he is a Muslim background too, we faced some problem living there, and without our life is in jeopardy. And that time I had a little girl, so we didn't want to put her in a danger too. So we came out of the Iran, lived 1 year in Athens, and then we entered into USA.
Nahid and her family now live in the US, but Iran is still the place she calls home. Our hope is there, she tells me.
In Iran, Christianity is considered a threat to the country's Islamic identity, and Christians face pressure and opposition. But I've also heard that the Christian church in Iran is one of the fastest growing in the world.
It's hard to get accurate numbers on this for obvious reasons. The churches are underground, and Christians are not exactly eager to identify themselves as Christians and, put a target on their own backs. One organisation, though, Operation World, this is a Christian organisation, says that the number of Christians in Iran is growing by around 20% a year. But Christians still make up less than 1% of the population.
Even so, in a country like Iran, that does seem surprising.
Well, as Nahid pointed out to me, Christianity does tend to grow when the pressure's on. There are many examples of that throughout history. For Iran, she says we have to look back to the Iranian Revolution.
Since after the revolution in 1979, we didn't have that much Christianity in Iran. We had about 350,000 Christians, including Armenian, Assyrian, Jewish background, and few Iranian too, Muslim background. But after the revolution, when it happened, the government started pushing the churches, and the people start seeing the reality of Islam. What is that? They start thinking, what is this? Is this the one we wanted?
So Iranians started to question their faith, and they turned to other religions, including Christianity, or atheism. For people who want to know about Christianity, though, it's hard in Iran to really find out what it means to be a Christian. The atmosphere is such that people in Iran are afraid to ask about Jesus. So they have to make do with what they have: television and the privacy of their own home.
We have 4 TV satellite channels, which they are producing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time. They are telling the people about Jesus Christ and loving of Jesus Christ. So that's why in Iran right now we have house churches instead of building churches. Mm-hmm. The building churches, if in Farsi language, they are not allowed in Iran anymore. So, and if the government find out about the house churches, they are in danger too. So
all the churches are secret?
All the Iranian Farsi speaker churches, they are in secret. Whenever the government gets aware of the house churches, they are trying to scare them. They are trying, most of them, they are being captured, keep them in a jail for a while, and pushing, you cannot worship Jesus anymore. You can have house church in your house. So, and then with the big bail, they can go back. But they're going to start it again, because who is funding Jesus who cannot get rid of that?
So if Christians get caught out, they go to jail, they pay a massive fine, they go home, they start again, what happens?
Exactly, and it made me wonder what it is about Jesus and Christianity that Iranian people are finding so compelling that they're risking their freedom, even their lives, for this. So I put that question to Nahid.
Iranian people, I can say they are God-fear people. And many Iranians, when they are coming to the church, they are having a dream of Jesus. One time, the time I was in Iran, and we've been in a church, a guy came to the office of the church and said, I want to be a Christian. My goodness, who is he? And we asked, who are you? Why you want to be a Christian? He said, last night, in my dream, he was living in a village and never been in Tehran. And said, last night, I had a dream, a very brightening light in my home, in my bedroom. I woke up and I said, what's going on? And the guy, the face was like Jesus, told me and gave me the church address. So what we can say? So I came here and right now tell me about Jesus. And many people, they are coming. We've been sick. We prayed to all the prophets. No one healed us. We went to the church and prayed to the Jesus, and he healed us. He healed my children. Right now we want to be a Christian.
You're listening to Life and Faith from the Centre for Public Christianity. We've just heard from Ehab from Egypt and Nahid from Iran. They both work for the Bible Society in their countries about what it's like to live in the Middle East as a Christian. Next up, Nabil from Iraq.
I've been in Mosul last week. Yeah. There's no churches. The whole church is burned, destroyed. I go to the bishops and ask them what we can do for you. I said, like, you can look, there's no church. But if you want to help us, churches without Bibles doesn't fit. So please, if you can give us Bibles.
I spoke with Nabil just after Nahid's interview, and we were telling him that story about the guy who saw Jesus in a dream. And Jesus gave him the address of Nahid's church and told him to go there. And this is what he said: "We don't sleep to dream. We don't have time to sleep." And from there, he basically told me story after story of the horrors that Christians, and also other minorities, have had to live through in recent years as the terrorist group ISIS has just swept through northern Iraq.
I know a lady, she was living in Baghdad, 2009, when the radical Muslim attacked the church. She was inside the church. After that, her husband, because she's traumatized, he take her to live in Mosul. And ISIS coming to Mosul, he take her again to Karakosh. And they attacked that village also. So he moved to Erbil. And she catched me and she said, like, what God needs from me?
Nabil says it's not just the homes that have been lost. Many people have also lost children. ISIS has kidnapped sons and daughters who have not yet been found. And he says that the Christians are not thinking about Jesus or even trying to be like Jesus. They just want their child back. And that's what they need. There's nothing he can do to help them except to try to comfort them and pray. And then he pulls out his phone and he shows me this photo of a young girl. She's smiling. It's probably in the middle of playtime. She's 3 years old in this picture. Then he swipes across and he shows me a picture of the same girl, but she's 6 years old. And she's unrecognisable. She's sullen. She looks thin. Her eyes are glazed over. She'd actually been kidnapped and held by ISIS for 3 years.
And we don't understand why ISIS just kidnap her. But we understand later that even those girls, after they will grow up, they will get married for ISIS people. So if they find her like she's looking nice, they wait until she grow up. 9 years, that's enough. So we try our best to help the family. We helped them that time, but her mother said, like, I doesn't care about anything in the world. Just return me my daughter. I need Christine back to my home. It's so difficult because Christine now, we find her in Mosul, in a place for ISIS, and we take her back to her mother. Christine now, she's traumatized. She can't sleep in the night. She screams all night. She can't sleep good. And she doesn't talk. She just keeps silent all the time. We just try to help her.
It's not only ISIS that's the problem. If you're a Christian in Iraq, it can be your own family who turns against you. Nabil tells me a story of one man he met. Nabil was in Baghdad airport and he was pulled aside by a customs officer who opened his luggage and found 2 children's Bibles in there. They called the supervisor over, who then took Nabil into an interrogation room. And Nabil was pretty scared. But then he couldn't believe what happened next. The man started telling him that there was a period of time that he was without work and struggling to provide for his family.
But one time, my son come to our home, coming with a package of food. And he have over that package a Bible, the same Bible you have it. And I start thinking that night, why those Christians help us as Muslims. And the other day he go to the church and ask for real Bible, for adults Bible. And he said, for the first 6 months, I read the Bible, the whole Bible.
So the supervisor said, I just wanted to tell you this story, and you're free to go. He opened the door, and as Nabil left, he said,
anytime you came to Baghdad, and you are in Baghdad airport, just remember you have brothers here. I closed the door again. I said, what do you mean by brothers? And he came in and whistled in my ears. And he said, I'm your brother in Christ.
So they kept in contact and struck up a close friendship. But then Nabil stopped hearing from him, and he felt he shouldn't try to contact him because it might be dangerous.
So one day after 6 weeks, 1 o'clock after midnight, he called me. And his name is Muhammad. I said, Muhammad, what's going on? I've just been worried about you. And nobody answered. I just feel afraid. I closed the line, and he called me again. And I heard that there's a woman talking. And she asked me, this is Mr. Nabil? I said, yes, who's that? And I'm Muhammad's wife. My name is Sana. I said, hello, Sana, how are you? I'm worried about Muhammad. Where he is? And she told me that Muhammad was passed away. I said, how come? And she said, his cousins killed him because he became Christians. But they doesn't know about me. So pray for me. It was so difficult time for me because he's became my friend. But she told me that if my husband died for Jesus one time, I'm ready to die 100 times for Jesus. So just pray for me.
So this woman, her husband has just been killed by his family, but she doesn't waver.
And Sister Sana, she's still in Baghdad. She lead study Bible with 32 women, Christian women, Muslim background. She do meeting with 3-4 women, other 3-4 women, different times, But if they know that's Christian and she evangelize other, she will kill it.
And these Bible studies are like a whole operation. The women all dress like Muslim women and they take turns meeting, so the group is never big enough to draw attention. And some of them have access to audio Bibles, so they wear their devices and headphones under their clothes and listen to the Bible in plain sight, even if they can't meet for a Bible study. What's striking is that even after everything Nabil's told me, how much suffering there is for Christians in Iraq, he still has hope. Even standing in the midst of utter destruction, he can find a glimmer of it.
From my side, I feel like I don't want to lose hope. There's hope. And when I've been in Mosul, this is what's happened. We go visit the church. The church was burned. But when you go out, I saw that there's flowers. And I told the bishops there, look, if the people destroy the church, God create new things. There's a hope all the time. So from my side, I think I don't want to lose hope.
From the Centre for Public Christianity, you've been listening to Life and Faith with Simon Smart, Justin Toe and Natasha Moore.
And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, do leave us a rating or a review. Go and put 5 stars. It helps other people to discover our show.
Yes, please do. And next week, do we or should we have the right to choose when and how we die?